Grade 9 English class. I am your teacher for today, Mrs. Maria Albanisa Sicalanri. For today's lesson, we are going to talk about modals. Verbs are an indispensable part of a complete English sentence. Primarily, they can express actions or states of being. They may work on their own or with other kinds of verbs, forming verb phrases. Verbs can be as simple as eat, dogs bark, or stop, but their use in various sentences can also grow complex.
Have you seen these verbs in their most complex forms? Travel, swim, study, and cry. Often, when we talk about verbs, we think of tenses, which tell us how an action relates to the flow of time. However, a lot about real-life events cannot be expressed in the absolute past, present, or future time. In asking permissions, for instance, do you use the present tense or the future tense of the verb? Expressing obligations also leads to the same kind of dilemma. In both cases, the focus is not on the time of when the action happens, but on the kind and intensity of attitude involved in the action. A special group of verbs called modals expresses such attitudes and meanings about actions more exactly.
At the end of this lesson, you should be able to know what are modals and how are they different from other verbs. Ask and give permission using modals, express prohibition using modals, and how to express obligation and lack of it using modals.
Modals are a special type of auxiliary verbs that behave differently from other verbs. As helping verbs, they add meaning to the main verbs. Your idea of verbs and auxiliary verbs in particular is a big advantage for you as we go through along this lesson. Let's take a look at this example. I am writing this sentence. Am is used as the auxiliary verb and writing is the main verb. All sentences need at least one main verb. In certain tenses and sentence structures, at least one helping verb assists the main verb to form a complete thought.
In the following sentences, can you identify the main verbs and the auxiliary verbs? You have 30 seconds to do this activity. Now, let's find out if your answers are correct.
Sentence number 1. Yes, I do know your cousin won. The auxiliary verb is do and the main verb is know. Sentence number 2. I might play basketball with them. Might is the auxiliary verb. Play is the main verb. Now let's take a look at sentence number 3. It has rained so many days that I can't remember the last time the sun was out. Notice that we have two auxiliary verbs and two main verbs. The auxiliary verbs are has and can't. The main verbs are rained and remember. Sentence number 4. It was raining, so we couldn't play outside. The two auxiliary verbs are was and couldn't. Raining and play are the main verbs. If you got a perfect score, then you are learning fast.
Modals are a special group of helping verbs or auxiliary verbs that gives information about the modality of another verb. The modalities of verbs are attitude, manner, or degree in which the action exists, is experienced, happened, or expressed.
A modal carries with it additional meaning that modifies the idea expressed by the main verb. This presentation shows fundamental meanings English modal verbs may carry with their examples. Modal verbs can be used to ask permission, express possibility or impossibility, give advice or suggestions, expressing certainty or uncertainty. They can also be used to ask probability. Modals can be used to express willingness or refusal, make requests or offer, express obligation, and express ability or inability.
Interestingly, some modals such as can, may, could, and must in the previous presentation may take several different meanings depending on their use in a particular sentence. There are 9 principal modal verbs in the English language: can, could, may, might, would, will, shall, should, and must.
Some modals may change in spelling in their contracted form. Notice how these modal verbs form their negative contractions. However, the modals may and might, in this case, cannot be contracted.
In general, a modal comes after the subject and the main verb in the sentence. A modal may also precede both the subject and the main verb. Modals also do not use the s and es in the third person singular, unlike any other verbs like teach and speak. For example, she teaches English online and Juan speaks English fluently, so we cannot say she can teaches or Juan can speaks. In this section of our lesson, you will learn about modals used to ask and give permission. The modal verbs can, could, and may are some of the modals used for this purpose. Although in some cases, they are actually the same in meaning and are interchangeable, many times they actually have different specific meanings in terms of degree and intensity in different sentences. We often use can to ask for and give permission. For examples, can I make a suggestion? Or you can use require if you like. We also use can to ask people to do something for us. To be polite, we can add please at the end of the question. Could is also used to ask permission, but not to give it. For examples, could I borrow your pen for a moment please? Or could I ask you something? Could is more formal and polite than the previous modal of can. We can also use the modal verb may to ask for and give permission. For examples, may I see your passport please? Or these pages may be photocopied for classroom use. May is the most formal and polite way compared to could and can. Now, let us find out how well have you learned about modals in expressing permission. You will answer 5 sentences and identify whether each uses permission or not. P, if the sentence is a permission, not P if it is not. You will be given 5 seconds to answer each sentence. Now, are you ready? Now, let us begin with the first sentence. You can walk straight now because of the therapy. Is it a P or not P? The answer is not P. You're on the right track. Let us proceed with the next sentence. The early finishers may go now and take a break. P, not P. The answer is P. You got it right. Now, let's solve the third sentence. Could you please help me? Is it a P or not P? The answer is not P. You're doing great. Let's have the next one. May I borrow your favorite pencil? Is it a P or not P? The answer is P. You're very good at that. Now let's have the last sentence. Yes, she can do that. Is it a P or not P? The answer is not P. Very well done. Moving on, let us discuss more about modals. What are you not allowed to do based on this feature? In this lesson, you will learn about modals used to express prohibition of a certain action or state. The modal verbs cannot or can't, may not, and must not or mustn't are some of the modals used for this purpose. Take note, however, of the slight and specific differences in their usage.
We use can't or cannot to talk about something that is against the rules, particularly when we didn't make the rules. For examples, the lady said we can't take photos in the museum. Sorry, I can't let you go out without your face mask on. We use must not to talk about what is not permitted. It is common on public signs and notices informing people of rules and laws. Examples: visitors must not park in the staff car park. Baggage must not be left unattended. This modal is also used to add a stronger sense of prohibition compared to the previous modal cannot. It is also used when the speaker, in a sense, agrees to the prohibition. Mustn't is the contracted form of the negative modal verb must not. It is used to express prohibition, something that is not permitted or not allowed. Examples: you mustn't say things like that to your sister. You mustn't be late to class. The prohibition when we use the modal verb mustn't can be subjective, particularly when the prohibitions come from the speaker. May not, just like its affirmative counterpart may, is more formal and more subtle way to prohibit something. Here are some examples. You may not leave unless you have finished your work. Non-parents may not be allowed to enter the clinic.
The discussion that we just had will serve as your guide in using modal verbs to prohibit someone or create rules. Do you think you're ready for some exercises? Now let's have a drill on how to use the modal verbs cannot or can't, may not, and must not or mustn't. Fill in the blanks with the most appropriate modals. You have 5 seconds to answer each statement. Answer the following activity. Complete the sentences with the most appropriate modals to express prohibition. You have 5 seconds to answer. Were you not informed that you blank will be in this area? It's for employees only. The answer is must not. Were you not informed that you must not go beyond this area? It's for employees only. Let's have the next sentence. You blank wear a hat in class. The answer is can't. You can't wear a hat in class. Let us proceed with the third sentence. Foreigners will not be allowed to stay here for more than a year. The answer is may not. Foreigners may not be allowed to stay here for more than a year. Now answer the fourth sentence. I told you, you black green hair that owned furniture. The answer is mustn't. I told you, you mustn't bring here that old furniture. Let's have the last sentence. You black eat in the conference room. The answer is may not. You may not eat in the conference room. You're getting better. Moving forward to the next section of our lesson, you will learn about modals used to express obligation to do something or to be in a certain state. The modal must and should are some of the modals used for this purpose. Must expresses a firm or strong necessity or obligation, whereas should is most commonly used to make recommendations or advice. Here are some examples of sentences using must. I must phone my dad. It's his birthday today. You must submit your project on Tuesday, or you will lose 20 points. It often shows that when we use must in the sentence, the obligation comes from the speaker or the authority who wrote the sentence. Here are examples using the modal should. The netizen should apologize for what he did. The children should study well. This sentence shows that the modal should can also be used to express firm obligation and expectation. To continue, there are verbs acting as semi-modals. Semi-modals are other verbs that share some of the characteristics of the principal modals. They are sometimes but not always used as modals.
Examples of semi-modals are ought to, need to, had to, do not have to, and need not to. Like the proper modal verbs, they are used with the base form of verbs to create a unique meaning. These semi-modals can also be used to express obligation, just like the modal verbs must and should. Let us discuss how the semi-modals are used. Have to shows us that the obligation comes from outside the speaker. We sometimes call this external obligation. For example, the twins have to work tomorrow so they can come. Have to is used to say that something is required or necessary. On the other hand, we use don't have to show that there is no obligation. Example, enrollment can be done online. Students don't have to go to school. This means that you can do something if you want to, but it's not compulsory. Semi-modals need to and need not to. Need to is used to express necessity. For example, I'd love to be at your party, but I need to be home early. Need to is used to say that it is important and necessary for someone to do something. Need not to is used to express lack of necessity to do or to be something. For example, her parents are now here. You need not to accompany her. Ought to is a semi-modal that expresses recommendation or moral obligation. For examples, you ought to know the consequences of your actions. Brothers ought to help each other during hard times. Ought to is used when we want to express an objective truth. In other words, what is necessary and cannot be avoided. To summarize what you have learned for today, modal auxiliary verb, often simply called a modal verb or even just a modal, is used to change the meaning of other verbs, commonly known as main verbs, by expressing modality. Modal verbs are defined by their inability to conjugate for tense and the third person singular, and they cannot form infinitives, past participles, or present participles. As with the primary auxiliary verbs, modal verbs can be used with not to create negative sentences, and they can all invert with the subject to create interrogative sentences. Modals can be used to express prohibition of a certain action or state such as cannot or can't, may not, and must or mustn't. Can, could, and may are some of the modals used to ask and give permission. When expressing obligation, the modals must and should are used for this purpose.
Now that you have learned much about modal verbs, let us see how well you understood the topic. Are you ready for a short quiz? I know you can do it! Choose the modal or semi-modal appropriate to each sentence. Then go to the party. I'm really tired. A. Do we have to? B. Can we? C. Can't we? The answer is A. Do we have to? You figured that out fast. Let's have the second sentence. You blank do your homework before watching television. A. Must. B. Can. C. Could. The answer is A. Must. You're doing great. Let us proceed with the third sentence. You blank buy a car if your salary cannot afford it. A. Mustn't. B. Don't have to. C. Can't. The correct answer is B. Don't have to. That's coming along nicely. Let's have the next item. Passengers play music or talk on the phone in this part of the train. A. Can't. B. Don't have to. C. Must not. The answer is C. Must not. You're learning fast. Finally, let's have the last sentence. Can I borrow your black dress tonight, please? A. Must. B. Can. C. Mustn't. The answer is B. Can. Perfect! That's all for today. I hope you have learned a lot in our lesson. For further practice, please refer to your modules and other references. Until our next lesson, again, I am Mrs. Maria Albanese, your English teacher for today. Happy to serve!